Hello and welcome to Telesur. I'm Doris Polo in Quito, and this is From the South. One day after facing heavy police repression, indigenous people have regrouped at the National Cultural Center in Quito to continue with their struggle. The leaders of Conaye and Ecuador have confirmed they will not negotiate with the government unless it withdraws its economic measures, and they want President Lenin Moreno to stand down. Indigenous groups inside the cultural center's main auditorium were able to apprehend 8 police officers who they threatened to punish with indigenous justice, a type of local justice system recognized by the Ecuadorian constitution in indigenous lands. These protesters have offered to release the officers unharmed if security forces surrounding the area back away and if national media outlets start a live transmission of this gathering, as most Ecuadorian outlets have repeatedly played down the size of the protest and the extent of the violence by the police.
To repeal the austerity package. Friends, if we do not...
Indigenous leaders in Quito spoke to the protesters earlier in the day, lamenting the death of 2 of their brothers, while also reaffirming their commitment to the struggle against the neoliberal measures of the government.
We have one of the dead right here. We will hold a mass for him, but that comrade who went to heaven, who will live in our hearts, he will give us strength because we need to defeat this government. We need your will and your strength because us indigenous people are not expecting to be handed food and water. We are like the grass in the fields. We will plant ourselves right here. We will not go down on our knees and we will not back down.
The indigenous protesters were also critical of the leaders of the Confederation of Indigenous Nationalities of Ecuador, who they say have failed to achieve their goals.
We've been fighting since last Thursday and we still have not achieved our goal. We've all come here from very far and we've come not under any demand from our leaders, but for our rights. We are in Quito since Monday and still we have no answer from the president of the Conaye. What is happening? Do you want to continue waiting while they negotiate better jobs with the government? We want the government to repeal the austerity package. Friends, if we do not achieve our desired result, it would be shameful. How can we ever show our faces again in our communities?
Our correspondent Estefania Bravo is with the indigenous movements in Quito and has more.
Hello, I am here in the Agora de la Casa de la Cultura in the north center of Quito, and as you can tell, the indigenous movements have come here. They are still, this is the 8th day of the strike, and they are still demanding President Lenin Moreno to eliminate the decree that eliminates subsidies to gasoline. They are here. They have come with their families, and they are saying that they won't give up, that they are not in negotiations with the government, and that they are still here and they will remain here until the government eliminates the decree. For them, there is no other option than for the government to eliminate the decree. They have also detained 8 policemen here. Let's recall that yesterday, 3 of the people of the indigenous movement were killed by police forces. So they are going to bring the bodies of the 3 people that were killed yesterday, of the 3 protesters that were killed yesterday, and they will bring them here so they can have a ceremony. They are also saying that they are not in negotiations with the government. They are asking for President Lenin Moreno to leave and also for them to eliminate the subsidies. They have also asked the communications, the media, for them to go live with this event because they say that the media here in Ecuador has not said the truth, and they are also demanding the media to say the truth. So we will be here the whole day and we will continue to update you with more information.
That was Estefania Bravo with that report. Now, Wednesday saw the country brought to a halt by a general strike. Thousands of indigenous people marched into the cities of Quito and Guayaquil, joining students, unions and other social organizations in rejection of the measures which would disproportionately affect those on lower incomes, transferring wealth upwards. The protests were met with massive repression across Ecuador, with 24,000 soldiers and 50,000 police officers deployed across the country. During an interview on Wednesday night, the president of Ecuador said that the police and military have been acting according to protocol, despite video evidence of excessive and unnecessary use of force by security forces, which has been denounced by numerous human rights organizations, both within Ecuador and internationally.
There are protocols for the military and police. These protocols principally being used by the police, but it's not getting to that point. On the contrary, the only thing that they've done is disperse crowds, but there have been serious acts of vandalism as well as aggressions causing injuries to police officers and members of the armed forces.
Citizens in Quito have continued to donate supplies and provide aid to the indigenous protesters. Collection centers have been set up in 2 universities in Quito and at the National Cultural Center, where citizens have been bringing food, water, medical supplies and toiletries for the protesters. On Wednesday night, these very centers were the target of police violence as tear gas canisters were fired inside. There are now 6 provinces where demonstrators have occupied or taken control of the governorships, which are the regional representatives of the national government. In the Central Highlands, indigenous and other social movements stormed the governor's offices in Bolivar, Chimborazo and Cañar. In the eastern Amazonian region, Napo, Pastaza and Morona, Santiago also saw protesters take over. In some cases, they have elected their own representatives to replace the governor. Meanwhile, Ecuadorians in the United States have also been protesting against the International Monetary Fund pushed austerity measures. A number of Ecuadorians entered the office of the IMF Special Representative to the United Nations in New York in order to reject their government's deal with the organization, which will disproportionately affect the working class. Carrying banners and the indigenous plurinational flag, the protesters called for the IMF to take its hands off Ecuador. Shifting gears now, Cuba's National Assembly is electing the country's top government officials. President Miguel Diaz-Canel and the first secretary of the Cuban Communist Party, Raúl Castro, are taking part in the special session of the Assembly of Popular Power. Members will elect the president and vice president of the Assembly, who, in line with the new constitution, will also serve as president and vice president of the country. Ahead of the session, Cuban citizens said they hoped and expected Diaz-Canel would be reconfirmed.
The most capable person should be selected, the one who is best capable to represent the country, who has new and diverse perspectives so that we can move forward.
I am very happy with him. He really has the ideals of our revolution. I am happy and grateful for his leadership.
Coming up, 9 people have or face treason charges in Ghana. We'll tell you why after the break. Welcome back. In Antigua and Barbuda, opposition leader of the United Progressive Party or UPP, Harold Lovell, and two other former cabinet ministers, Wilmoth Daniel and Dr. Jackie Quinn, have been charged for corruption, fraud, larceny and embezzlement. The decision comes more than 2 years after a magistrate dismissed a case against the trio in relation to buses that were donated to the government during their tenure. The judge had ruled that the evidence was scant to say the least. It is alleged that the trio converted 3 Daewoo buses worth more than $600,000 that had been donated by the government of South Korea for their personal use. CARICOM continues to demand reparations for the enduring suffering inflicted by the Atlantic slave trade, while also examining the challenges to the region's economic and political independence posed by international finance systems and the current debt crisis in the region. Caribbean leaders are discussing these concerns at a CARICOM reparations symposium currently underway in Antigua and Barbuda.
We cannot forget that our European oppressors not only exploited us, but left us all in a condition of extreme poverty, mass illiteracy, inadequate health and educational institutions, and a pandemic of chronic debilitating NCDs deriving from centuries of excess salt and sugar consumption. Now, the Europeans utilize an inhumane model, what I consider to be a brutal extractive economic model, to control the Caribbean as a zone of wealth creation to fund their own development.
In other news, Montserrat Premier Donaldson Romeo has been ousted as leader of the ruling People's Democratic Movement just ahead of the November 18th general election. He was reportedly voted out 6-2 by his colleagues who have long been upset over his leadership. It is unclear if Romeo will continue to serve as Premier in the interim. The Legislative Assembly was dissolved by force on Tuesday, 1 day after he announced the election date. The Minister of Works, Communication, Energy and Labour, Paul Merks, has since been selected to lead the party.
Also benefit from being able to access.
Ghana's state prosecutor has charged 9 people with treason after they were accused of plotting to overthrow the government. They were arrested last month for allegedly plotting to seize key state installations with the aim of overthrowing President Nana Akufo-Addo. According to the state prosecutor, the accused were part of a group known as Take Action Ghana and had planned to stage a series of protests with the purpose of destabilizing the country. The prosecutor added that the group engaged the services of a local blacksmith to manufacture pistols and explosives to enable them to execute their plan. Tunisia's Islamist party Ennahda, led by Rached Ghannouchi, has topped the legislative polls with 52 seats, but fell short of the majority required to form a government. Presidential candidate Nabil Karoui's Kalb Tunis party came second with 38 seats, while independent candidates scooped 33 seats. Ennahda will need to negotiate a coalition deal with other parties to be able to run the country for the next 5 years. On Sunday, retired law professor Kais Said faces Karoui in the second round of the presidential election. The World Health Organization says the Ebola epidemic has been squeezed into a much smaller geographic area in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The epidemic has killed more than 2,000 people since August 2018, causing the WHO to declare it an international public health emergency.
Containing a virus is a different prospect to eliminating that virus from human populations, and at this point we have to ensure that we push the virus completely out of the human population, and we need to do that as quickly as we can, while being very careful to continue to keep the community on board and to protect our staff and ensure our staff have the proper enabling environment in which to do their work safely.
The Nigerian Senate has reintroduced an anti-sexual harassment bill that seeks to prevent the victimization of university students. This follows a media investigation which exposed widespread sexual misconduct by multiple lecturers at 2 top West African universities. The bill proposes a prison term of between 5 and 14 years for lecturers who have a sexual relationship with their students. Once passed, it will also be illegal for lecturers to make sexual advances towards students. With more than 1 million inhabitants, the Brazilian city of Maceió in the northeastern state of Alagoas is well known for its beautiful beaches and lagoons. But in 4 neighborhoods around the city, 45,000 citizens are seeing their dreams and their homes disappear.
Empty streets and houses. It looks like a ghost city, but it's actually a neighborhood called Pinheiro in the city of Maceió, the capital of Alagoas. Eliane invites us to see a house which she had to abandon 8 years ago. A broken house and broken dreams as well.
Every day we are back here, it's worse. The ground keeps moving and the cracks are growing too.
76 years old, Jose João shares a small house with his son and his wife at the edge of a cliff, but the walls are cracking. It's the same situation as other houses that had to be abandoned.
There were already cracks before the earthquake that struck 18 months ago. After it, the cracks grew.
At the edge of the Mundão Lagoon, the Braskem company has been extracting minerals from the ground since the 70s, in particular halite, a mineral similar to sodium chloride. The Pinheiro neighbourhood has a history of sinking since it was built over a geological fault, but the 35 halite mines add to this issue. After heavy rains in February 2018 and a 2.4 Richter scale earthquake in March of the same year, the situation worsened. A study from the Brazilian Geological Service, published in April 2019, was very clear.
The main reason for the sinking of the Pinheiro neighborhood is linked to the halite extraction.
Local movements such as SOS Pinheiro and other international bodies demand an urgent solution to the situation and point out that the lagoon and removing huge amounts of earth are a dangerous combination.
I believe that behind all this, there's mining companies, but there's also the interest of the real estate business.
We are here to build a popular movement of sovereignty in mining and to demand from the company to work with respect and dignity for all the affected people.
The Braskem company has been fined more than $7 million for giving false information about its impact in the region. But it ensures that the studies are being carried out in 18 mines until December. The Alagoas Environmental Institute is tracking the situation, but for now, the mines have been cleared.
We'll take a short break now, after which we'll tell you about an attempted mass shooting in Germany which left 2 people dead. Don't touch that remote. Welcome back. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has rejected international criticism of his country's military operations in northeast Syria, as he reported on the progress of the 2nd day since Turkish troops entered the Kurdish-controlled territory.
Since the beginning of the operation, 109 terrorists have been killed so far, just like all the other operations carried out by Turkey. The aim of the Peace Spring is to contribute to Syria's territorial and political integrity. Saudi Arabia should look into the mirror. Who brought Yemen to this state? Look at its current condition. Did tens of thousands of people not die in Yemen? Hey, Saudi Arabia, give account for this first.
Erdogan's words come a day after the Turkish military arrived at the Syrian border. A military convoy reached Syria and drove along the border, crossing into the northern side of the country. This marked the beginning of ground operations after having attacked Kurdish militia positions in northeast Syria with airstrikes and artillery barrages in a cross-border military operation. And all this just days after U.S. troops pulled back from the area. Meanwhile, police have detained at least 5 protesters in Diyarbakir, the largest city in mainly Kurdish southeast Turkey, for criticizing the military attack against Kurdish militia in the northeast. Police used water cannons to disperse the gathering, which was initially called against the ousting of elected mayors of the pro-Kurdish People's Democratic Party, but it turned into a protest against the Turkish military operation in Syria. A senior Kurdish official has warned that Islamic State militants could break out of prisons in northeast Syria after one of the prisons was bombed by Turkish planes.
One of the prisons in which the ISIS prisoners are kept under the control of Syrian Democratic Force was bombed by Turkish warplanes yesterday, and probably some of the ISIS members have escaped from this prison. We want an urgent intervention on this crisis, and these attacks should be stopped immediately. The airspace should be closed for Turkish flights that bombing attacks, air attacks can be stopped. And all European states should freeze their relations by withdrawing their ambassadors from Turkey immediately.
An attempted mass shooting in Germany has left 2 people dead and 2 more severely injured. A gunman tried forcing his way into a synagogue in the eastern German city of Halle. However, he failed to enter the building as the entrance was immediately barricaded. Authorities said 1 suspect was arrested, but 2 others fled in a hijacked car. German media identified the killer as Stefan Balliet, a 27-year-old German citizen. North Korea has celebrated the 74th founding anniversary of the nation's ruling party. People gathered under the statues of the country's founder Kim Il-sung and the late leader Kim Jong-il to pay tribute by laying flowers at their feet. Founded in 1945, the WPK states that its primary objective is political, economic and military independence for North Korea. And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. For our viewers in Africa, remember you can find us on Starsat Channel 461 in South Africa and Channel 539 in Nigeria. And join us on social media. For Telesur English, I'm Doris Polo. Thank you for watching.